Welcome back to the podcast. I'm here in the home studio again in Tasmania, and my guest today is Vivien Mason, an animator and filmmaker based also in Tasmania. We just weren't able to get together this time. So, Vivien, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. This is great. I mean, it's great to be able to see you and your studio here. And it's already got me thinking of so many questions about your process, because you are our first filmmaker and animator on the podcast. And these are things that absolutely fascinate me. So a little bit self-indulgent, listeners. I will probably ask lots of questions to learn, but that's why we're all here, right? So anyway, Vivien, without further ado, perhaps you could tell us where your passion, your interest, your practice for animation, filmmaking, where did it all begin?
I guess I'm one of those people. There are sort of a certain category of filmmaker where they've just done it since they were kids, and that's where I sit. And I guess a lot of people can relate to having a huge passion for things that you watch on TV or at the movies as a kid. And I was certainly one of them. And my dream was that I could do it as a job. And I guess that's something that I'm still, I've done that, and I'm still working on it, essentially.
Amazing. Yeah. So it was, I would say that was, although I wouldn't be able to articulate it like that, that was perhaps where I was at as a kid. I never did it, and that's why we're here today. So thank you again. So I get this from your, watching your YouTube, and particularly Handmade Happiness, which is your most recent project. Am I right? There is a childlike charm to it. It's absolutely captivating for me. So, as a young person, how did it play out for you? I mean, were you always which came first, the animation or the filmmaking, or is it all one thing? Yeah, what did it look like back then?
I probably started out with filmmaking, but I definitely was interested in the more fantastical side of films. And I remember having a conversation with a really good friend when I was in early high school, and she's saying, what do you think you want to do as a job? And I had been given a book of Star Wars concept art, and I was like, oh yeah, I think maybe something like that. So I wasn't really sure how it could be a job, but just the idea that you could live in a slightly imaginative context was really appealing. And I guess it's a long and winding road to find out where you can fit professionally. It's such a wide and collaborative area to work in that. Yeah, I guess I worked in live action because that was predominantly what was available working in Tasmania, and working in mainland Australia as well. That was what I was most aware of. And over time, I had the opportunity to work in visual effects. And I guess at university, there wasn't a film course where I lived. And so I did a fine arts course, and I got more opportunities to explore software and animation through that. And those skills and just my strong interest in that, and it ended up that I had skills that allowed me to start working in the visual effects industry, and then to work more in pure animation and cartoons and things like that later on. But I've always done quite a wide variety of work, which is not a bad thing. Working in Australia, I think being a generalist is quite a positive thing in the film industry. So I have probably just followed my curiosity in lots of different directions, and I'm focusing more, I think, at this point in trying to create original animation or to direct animation, and that's really rewarding. I really enjoy it.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So it didn't necessarily start with animation, but I, I, I think what I get from you there, Vivien, is very much, yeah, what you that's the key point about being a generalist. So trying, following your curiosity and trying different things. But I guess by following your curiosity, you find the things that most interest you, the things that pay the bills. But also at the same time figuring out where do you want to be doing the work that you love the most, and how can you get there? Would that be?
Absolutely. I mean, I think can be a really different thing looking at a job from the outside and then actually doing it. And of course,
Mm,
we live at a time where technology is constantly progressing. It's not a static thing, to say, "Oh, I want to do this job because there are jobs now that didn't exist when I graduated." It's an evolving situation in terms of what you're aiming for and what's possible. And yeah, I guess staying interested is so important in any occupation that you're pursuing. I think there's been sort of various patterns in animation and visual effects, um, that I've identified where people just get more and more and more specialized, and hopefully you luck out and find a specialty that really speaks to you. But um, yeah, obviously being a generalist is very helpful, and helps you cover the bills and all of these things, which is you know that's what you need to have a sustainable career.
yes, indeed. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. As regular listeners know, I wrote a book about these things because I was, yeah. It does, but we don't need to go back into that quite yet, if at all. The I, you did say there was a Star Wars animations book, visual effects book.
Concept art.
Sorry,
Yeah.
concept art. Sorry.
Not at all.
Yeah, no. And as you're saying about technology change, and I wrote a blog post a while back about um, about it was George Lucas and about how in those early Star Wars movies there wasn't the technology, so they built the technology, and so a lot of the technological innovations in the space that you work now would have actually come through from that. So I find that really interesting. But in this sort of where am I going with this? I think what I'm really interested in is something you said before the podcast. You've got a 15-year-old microphone, and there's a bit of a shift. But so I think the sorts of things that you would have been working on and making a few years ago you'd be doing it quite very different now. So has your process changed much?
I think things have just really settled down. I think that the time that I was at an undergraduate, it was really a point of transition where just the formats that uh, since that time, um, TV is now broadcast digitally. The size of what standard is established, standard definition is not something that you want to be watching on a high quality screen. Things have just changed in terms of we're not dealing with tapes
Yeah.
at this point, and you don't need to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in hardware to master and distribute something that has been filmed. Everything has gone digital and everything is much more accessible, and you can have technology at home which can allow you to do a huge amount. And yeah, it's just really opened up the possibilities for things that people are doing now in being digital creators in sharing work online and that work can also be shared for broadcast, or in more sort of for events, or there are far fewer limitations of the equipment that you need to create something that is watchable and good quality. And I guess that's a really exciting thing that's happened over the course of the time that I've been working.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And so if we go back to, so you said you did a fine arts degree. I
Yeah.
mean, how uh, so film, how did you was filmmaking part of that, of your study then? Did you make, were you able to do that? And what, I mean, how were you working back then with film? And I mean, was it all stop motion back then? Or, I mean, yeah, we haven't really got to the stop motion question. I'm sort of jumping ahead a bit, but yeah, how were you working?
I guess that was my introduction to After Effects and Premiere Pro. I guess I'd taught myself at home from having low quality sort of software options, and sort of I'd done work experience, and people had Premiere Pro, so I had a copy of that. And I was lucky to be able to have time. It was before YouTube, so learning to do things, you were getting the book out,
Yeah.
which, as we know now, is not as good. Or still could be useful, but really forums and YouTube are fantastic resources to learn to do things. And so I really wanted to learn to edit things and to put things together, and I had a lot of fun doing that. And I guess when I was an undergraduate, I was trying to do things in quite an artistic way in editing software, and essentially it was breaking the projects because the software couldn't hold all of the visual information that I was trying to layer in there. And I gradually learned to use After Effects and Nuke and other softwares that will allow you to layer lots of elements together, and I guess take sort of things that you might have created in Photoshop or by hand and photographed, and combine them into a film. So I was working to create animation when I was at university, but it wasn't a animation specific course in any way.
No, no, no.
It
But
was
no,
just an opportunity where people were pointing me in the right direction of, oh, you should look up this, and if you're working on this, you might enjoy, this other thing that you haven't heard of, and that's always incredibly helpful to have that exposure.
yeah, yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. It's, I think what I'm finding interesting is that you're talking about how what people might call post production. So you've got content, or you would have had content, but then you're looking to, you're using those softwares to find ways to produce something from them. So and you mentioned there, it's photographs you've taken, or animations you've made using other software. So what are those pieces of content that you're using? And that perhaps gets me to the stop motion question, because I noticed with Handmade Happiness, needle felting is something that's part of your practice as well.
Yeah, so I guess in the early days, I was doing watercolors and ink drawings, and photographing textures of fabric at the tip shop, or just things that you came across that was interesting, and then essentially you could make digital photo collages of things that you'd made or things that you'd photographed, and then bring all of those elements together, and you would be needing to record ambient sound to write scripts, and record voices for and put together narrative animation, and that was exciting, just to learn how to put those things together. But I guess many years down the track, I got much more. I had a period of time where I was able to be an artistic resident for 12 months, and I was really interested in creating puppets and learning the techniques to do that and creating more sophisticated puppets, and I guess learning to photograph them, so that they could be animated. There was a lot of technical stuff to get to grips with in order to basically just, design characters and bring them to life.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So moving from collage to into animating, and wow. And can I ask where the your artist residency was?
I was lucky to be a resident at the Cité International d'Arts,
Ah,
for a couple of months, and later to be an Arts Tas resident, when they had some studio spaces, and um, those in between those experiences and before that, I'd just been working in television production and film production. So yeah, just to take time out to focus on making making things I was really passionate about. I It's just something that I find rewarding and sort of essential in some way. I think it's great working in production because you learn things. It's very collaborative, and you work with huge teams who have lots of expertise, and the things that you can do as a group of people are so much, you know, grander than you can do as a single artist working, in a studio. But um, each of those things has their value in a way, in terms of, there is something really special about going to things like animation festivals and seeing what a whole range of different people have created, um, because it's their unique viewpoint that is really interesting, and that's something that's harder to maintain in a very large scale product, or a very large scale production that has a lot of investment and a lot of pressure, and it's to to have that artistic voice is, and to maintain it through that big process, it can be hard.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so making time to really hone in on your own practice and develop it in a direction, or take it in a direction that you wanted to take it. That was the power of the residency.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And
Mm.
it honestly, it's just something that you have very little time for if you're working in lots of jobs, but working on um, a drama production in particular is very long hours every week, and it's going to be very hard to keep something else going at the same time.
Yeah. 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 No. So that's something that really interests me about. So something you talked about before is technological innovation, and how that enables, for example, someone like me to be able to begin to make video podcasts, right? Whereas perhaps 3 or 4 years ago, that wasn't quite as achievable as it is today. Even now, this software we're using right now, it enables me to have a production studio set up that wasn't possible even a year, maybe 2 years ago. So the to be on the set of a large production, as you say, time pressures, budget pressures, and so on, and lots of people, lots of moving parts, um, and I guess I actually got on a film set last week, relatively small, but still incredibly. I learned an awful lot about how people work together to problem solve. So that's something that that's part of your work. And so it's, I guess what I'm trying to understand is how do you so you'll have the you'll be doing that sort of work that's collaborative. You're part of a team perhaps, and then how do you balance that with your own work, which is, or perhaps what does that look like? And then how do you balance that, reconcile that with when you want to do, the work that Vivien wants to do?
Yeah, so what does that look like in terms of your artistic experience if you're working on a large project?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. How do you as an individual artist, or yeah, how do you um, move between those two mindsets, if you like?
Mm. I mean, I think the wonderful thing about working on sets and working on larger projects is that there's a wonderful sense of collaboration and, just collective enthusiasm to make a thing, because you're still filming a story that's Australian, and you know that it's going to go out to a large audience, and that, essentially all of the people who are working in that context have chosen to be there because they want to live a very in a an industry which is very insecure, in order, because they have this passion that they want to be part of creating those stories, and you get lots of really interesting people that choose to live in that way, to prioritize that in their lives. So it's, there are lots of really interesting creative people, and the people that have got decades of experience to work alongside them and see the way that they do things is fantastic. And Australia has lots of really fantastic people behind the scenes, and to have an exposure to that level of commitment to people working in their chosen craft is really, um, a dream come true. I guess the thing that is challenging over time with that is that it takes a huge number of people to create, a feature animation, or a feature film, or a TV drama series, or all of these things, and you can end up doing a very similar sort of role for a lot of the time. And I guess that's where, you can have the thrilling and the fun sides of that, and then you can have the sides of that where you're like, I just want to have a little window of time to go and explore my own personal practice and my creativity. And not everybody has that need to go and do that, but it's certainly something that appeals to me. And I guess it's sort of like a parallel thing where you do learn the ways that other people tell stories from those larger projects, and then you can still transfer those ideas and those techniques. I think I want to go and try that out on something that I'm working in personally, or there's lots of crossover of sort of skills and ideas, and I guess it's really that, to have the space and the opportunity to try them out. Sometimes you've got to work on a smaller thing that you have more input into.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, regular listeners know that I'm getting into video myself, and people who read my blog know that I'm like a sponge when it comes to filmmaking, and what I'm really getting, and what really sort of shone through for me last week when I was on a small film set for a day, was the problem solving. So I'd heard filmmakers on YouTube talk about problem solving. I've listened to people like Roger Deakins and I don't know, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. It's sort of, they're all talking about problem solving. But what you've just described there, Vivien, is how when you are in that collaborative space working together, you are that these are the sorts of things you'll be doing is how do you, but the creativity, and that's when the creativity comes through, but it might not necessarily be apparent. But so then you as an individual, you're making time and space to explore your own creativity. But as you said, you're learning from so many, things I learned last week, I want to put into practice the next time I pick up my camera. And I guess that's how, being part of that, being part of a production, you are bouncing off each other. And is it a very democratic process of decision making and problem solving that do you find? Or, I mean, I suppose it's different from set to set, production to production.
I mean, I think the whole structure of it is really that, a few key creatives need to sort of lead and inspire a much larger number of people to put things together in a very short period of time. If you're constructing sets, if you're designing things, really it's going to be the director or the art director or, the editor saying, I'm looking for this. Can you put something together that's in this direction? So, there's creativity in being part of a large number of people who are putting together small elements that are going to help that leader of the section that you're working in. That head of department is really the person that's got the vision, and it's up to everyone else to help them fulfill that. And people can do all kinds of really creative things in a task that is contributing to the whole thing, but really it's the person who's the director, and sometimes the producers, who are sort of fulfilling this vision. And obviously, depending on whether it's documentary or drama, the writer can have a huge amount of input and, huge importance in terms of shaping what you're aiming for. But, it's not really an individual pursuit. It's just something that takes a lot of people with skills to lead, to I guess basically achieve something very large and complicated, like on a daily basis, and to capture all of those shots and all of those ideas and bring them into something that's a finished film. So, it's not really about the individual for most of the crew.
No. And I think that helps clarify my question before, which you answered brilliantly, which was about how do you reconcile being part of a crew and your individual practice. And so perhaps what we could do is Tim can stop asking questions about what life's like on a film set, and
Sure.
Tim can go away and get invitations to get on to others' film sets. Behind you you are in your studio right now, and I can see a big rig behind you, and so you are. If we could use perhaps Handmade Happiness as our case study to discuss,
Sure.
How did first? Let's start with what is Handmade Happiness and how did that come about? For those who haven't seen it, I will put a link to your YouTube.
Thank you.
So listeners can watch it. I really love it. It spoke to me in a couple of different ways there, I think. And but is that something that was made in your own studio? What was your role? Did you have a crew? How did that all come about? And what was the process of making it?
So Handmade Happiness was commissioned by organisation that no longer exists called Wide Angle Tasmania, and they commissioned a number of Tasmanian filmmakers to make a documentary. There were a few dramas actually, predominantly documentaries about people overcoming challenge, or I think the theme was resilience. Anyway, essentially, it was a commissioned film, and you had the opportunity to respond to their concept of having a film series about Tasmanians with resilience. And I came back with a number of concepts, which all really centered around creativity as a means to overcome something that was challenging in your broader life. And the concept that I ended up going with was about making things by hand and essentially exploring the idea that a range of handmade activities, we show knitting, sewing, and ceramics, that those activities and making things by hand, entering that state of composure and flow that is needed to really concentrate on using your hands to create something, that process, I feel like I should start this answer again. It's got a bit long.
That's okay. It's
um,
okay.
I guess so. I was exploring various different art forms that you make by hand. Two different people who do knitting, but also another artist that dyes and recycles fabric and yarn, and another artist that works with clay and creates ceramics. Just exploring their connection with that art form that they follow, and discovering how that experience is for them, and how that experience can be transformative of their state of mind, of their how essential it is to them to have that little opportunity to do something with your hands. And I guess animated documentary gave an opportunity to use those actual materials that each of those artisans is working with, to interview them and to listen to a description of what they were working with, but then to visualize that with the material actually moving around, and to try and visualize something that really is a very sort of cerebral process, maybe you could say, and that maybe is something that we take a little bit for granted, because something like knitting has been seen as a handicraft that's often done at home, and probably hasn't had the seriousness and the respect that it could have for the huge value that it has to the person that's doing that art form, and just spending time in that flow state that's so rewarding and valuable.
Yeah, yeah. That's yeah. No, and as you say, for your what you've done is through your work is to visual to help us as viewers to visualize how meaningful the those practices are to those artisans. And I think, I mean, the most memorable moment for me in that particular film is when the person who upcycles clothing, they fly off the table. And it's just because they say so. There's something they say, and you've then interpreted that visually with the is it right to say that they're puppets? I mean,
Yeah,
what?
yeah. So it is documentary, but each of the interviewees is visualized as a fabric puppet, and they're stop motion puppets. So essentially, I've photographed them moving one sort of hand adjusted movement at a time to yeah, and in a context where they're just against an abstract background of a single color, and the puppets are being interviewed, but they're also undertaking the activities that they describe, but not in a realistic way. So yeah, the moment you're talking about, the interviewee is talking about how they just don't want to do a job that is the same every day. That is not they're not capable of that. They need variety and exploration, and I guess to fulfill that curiosity that just about all humans have. And so he says that he can't sit at a desk every day and do the same job. And so I had a little set up of items that are typically seen on a desk, a computer monitor and pens and things, keyboard, and the puppet walks away from them and just jumps off the side of the desk, and essentially goes parachuting. But that interviewee was interested in collecting fabric, or collecting secondhand garments and repurposing them and creating new fashion designs essentially out of them. And so yeah, I had, rather than visualizing the puppet going to lots of secondhand shops and acquiring clothes, which would have been the more realistic take on that activity, after the character had jumped off the desk, the puppet, I had the puppet basically harvesting clothes, which were all it was raining clothes essentially, and there were just little items being sort of plucked out of the air by the puppet, and that was much more exciting way.
Yes.
But I guess intellectually sort of giving the same information and the same effect, but because it's animation, you could do something very unrealistic.
Yes, yeah, and by doing so, that is how you can convey just how meaningful these things are. If realism isn't always the best way to convey meaning.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess things that can be, potentially quite dry if they're presented factually, actually there's passion and there's thinking behind that, and a sense of adventure, and it's fun to look at the world in that way.
Yeah, and I think you really capture the each individual character in the film, and how expressive each of the characters, how expressive they are. And so I think no matter what your age, no matter what your background, whatever your interest, you're going to be absolutely captivated by this, and you're going to take away from the film just what its core purpose, and learn something for yourself. I know I did.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't explain that. Yeah, it was shot in my home studio. There were me and two other animators, and yeah, we used paper backgrounds and a small scale setup to film, and yeah, it was definitely a team effort. And I wasn't the person that did the interviews. They were done by Letitia Lamb, and we had other graphics design and music, and we had all these elements come together, and it was a great team effort. But I particularly sort of designed the puppets and fabricated them, and yeah, putting together the aesthetic of everything was really a joy.
Yes, yeah, and yeah. So when we were talking before about different roles on different productions, so you were the director, but you would have assumed other roles as well. But the creative direction would have been coming from yourself.
Yeah, for Handmade Happiness, and
Yeah.
I guess the nature of the project was that there weren't many expectations or limitations on that, so it was quite free creatively to go and, you know, make something in the way that seemed, you know, most appropriate and most fulfilling artistically, and that was great.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Um, yeah, look, what I should have said is, of course, it is an award-winning film. As you know, it's been around a few film festivals. Am I correct?
That's right. We were lucky to get into quite a number of festivals and to win a few prizes. We won Best Documentary Animation at Los Angeles Animation Festival, and we're very excited to get into Sydney Film Festival and London International Animation Festival. Um, they're particularly difficult to you know, just the force of numbers of how competitive it is to get films into festivals. We're very excited to our team to have work shown in those places. We also won an award at Tbilisi Animation Festival. So yeah, it was lovely to have a small team working at a regional location and to put together a project with not a huge budget or scope, but for it to go out and seem to really have a value to other people and to be seen in a, you know, really around the world. So that was very exciting.
Yeah. Now, for again, people like me who don't know the process, I mean, I've former academic colleagues and friends who have had films in film festivals, documentary films, and so my understanding is that you sort of have to make a choice these days. You're either going to put it out to the public on YouTube, or you submit to festivals before you can go uh, do that. But maybe that's completely wrong. So for those of us who are perhaps are considering making a film of some kind, what is the process for putting it out into the world that you followed there?
Well, it certainly used to be the case that you had to uh, submit things to festivals before you put it online. Currently, it's more of a case that you probably want to um, pick the festivals that you would most like to get into. And festivals sometimes have a limitation that they won't show something that's been shown online because they want the audience to come and see their festival and for it to be exclusive to some extent. And so, you know, it that certainly used to be the case, but some festivals are now much more open-minded and don't care. So it might be great to have a premiere at a festival that is particularly selective, and then to have a wider festival release and an online release of your film sort of more around the same time, or certainly the amount of time that things are staying offline. That sort of timeline that it used to take to distribute a film around festivals is getting much shorter. For various reasons, with Handmade Happiness, we had to do it in quite a traditional way and to wait quite a long time to put it online. That was partly the nature of the funding and various other factors, but the way that the strategy that that I took in distributing it essentially was there was just X amount of money in the budget to put it into festivals, and I guess you can select the festivals that you would most like to get it into, and it's much easier than it used to be because many festivals have it listed on sort of a small number of festival distribution websites, and so yeah, I guess, and everything is digital delivery, which is great. So I guess the idea is to put it out to as many festivals as possible, but the higher, the more high end
Prestige.
festivals, yeah, the more prestigious festivals, they will want to have some sort of premier status in their geographic location, be it their city or their state or their continent. There are lots of limitations to that. So I guess having a
Yeah.
knowledge of what festivals are out there and what festivals you would like to enter things into can be helpful. But probably the most useful thing is to put it out to as many festivals as possible. And it's great with animation because a lot of the festivals, a lot of the, you know, a lot of the festivals are free to enter. That are animation
Great.
specific festivals, whereas other wider festivals can often have a really high fee just to enter, and so that's quite a restricting thing for people,
Mm.
particularly if you're making short films. It's like you can have a finite budget of how many festivals you can enter that do have a big fee attached.
Yeah. A question comes up for me right there: is there less money in animation? Is that, I mean, you've talked about being on quite small budgets. Is there a disparate or a difference between the animation and other forms of filmmaking?
I guess animation just takes time because each element that you're looking at needs to be designed and created from scratch. And if you're filming something that's live action, then there's still a huge amount of work involved, but you don't need to fabricate every element. And so, yeah, typically, the people who are creating short films in that medium and the people who are running festivals of that medium, they're doing it because they love the art form, and it's less about
Mm.
um, money. To some
Yeah,
degree,
yeah, yeah,
there's less
yeah.
there's less possibility to hit the jackpot with a an animated short film, perhaps, than with other types of films you could release. And so, you know, that's one of the nice things about it. It's quite an artistic corner of the film community.
Yeah, what I didn't ask you, which I'm really interested in myself, and I'm sure listeners are saying, Tim, you should have asked, is how long did it take to make um, Handmade Happiness?
It took around 6 months to make.
Yeah.
We weren't shooting the whole time. I think we shot for 4 or 5 months, and there were maybe 2 months of script development and preparation and interviews, and then editing down those interviews. And then, because that's something in animation production, you do the editing first, whereas in live action production, you do the editing at the end, after filming. And so and then we had a couple of weeks of um, post production and tweaking things at the end of the shoot. But it wasn't full time the whole time, but there was a team working around it, doing different roles within the production. So yes, it took about 6 months, but there wasn't someone on it, every day of the week.
No, 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 no. But it gives us a strong sense of just the amount of work that's going into it. I think in the age we live in now, this is coming from a Gen X old man now. It's we can watch it. We can watch something that's 3 or 5 minutes long on YouTube and be incredibly dismissive of it, and not appreciate just how much work goes into it. And so it's a little thing that I've got inside me about just how much content is out there, how high, as you said before, with the innovations we have, the the quality that we're able to see on a screen with a lot less effort And I think it means that what we're in danger of as societally is undervaluing the creative and artistic work that goes into making film.
We're certainly very saturated with content at this moment in time, and I think it is one of the joys of watching stop motion, or looking at behind the scenes of how stop motion is created. That you know there's there's love going into that project, and it has been an art form that it has sort of had a little bit of a renaissance in recent times. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing Memoir of a Snail at the cinema in very soon. So yeah, but I think particularly at a point where there's a lot of digital content, there's a lot of very sort of throwaway content, and now AI as well. It's like, what is the human connection or the human value of the emotion and the artistic quality of that's been put into something that you're watching. It's not, it doesn't sort of feed your soul particularly, I think, to watch things that have been generated for a long time. It's very good for short things, particularly, seen some great memes on comedy shows and different things where something's been generated, but for something that speaks to you emotionally, it's possible, but more of a challenge. Something I haven't watched too often.
No, I think. I mean, if I could add to that, being able to see the process. I remember when I was much younger, Aardman Studios, you seeing behind the scenes what it took to make Wallace and Gromit and all those animations, and I think that if we can see if we can understand the process, the work that goes into and the creative choices and so much behind this, then we will appreciate it. But I still go back to yeah. I think just watching Handmade Happiness, and I think we can actually see it for ourselves, just how meaningful those stories are and how you bring them to life even more. So I wanted to get to. Sorry, did you want to? I had to get that in because we were on our way to festivals. We were talking about festivals, and I want to get to a festival that you're organising, which is Lutruwita Animation Festival. And sorry, yeah, I did just. I went off on a tangent, so sorry about that.
Not at all. Not at all.
No, so tell us about Lutruwita Animation Festival. This was how I discovered your work. Was I saw you advertising it, and I thought, wow, that's something I could go to. I'd love to go along. So, what is it, and how can people get along there?
Well, it's a one-day festival in Hobart, celebrating animation, and this will be the first year. And if it goes well, maybe we'll do it again. It's, I guess, an excuse to collect the community together that creates things, and to screen work, to have an opportunity for a workshop so that people can get started in creating their own work. We're going to have a feature film that's family friendly, so that it's an excuse to come out and enjoy some Australian culture sort of collectively, something that is can be expensive, but we're going to be running it for free. And we're also having a kids competition, and there'll be a screening of the work from the kids competition, and the judges will be professional animators from the community, so there'll be a chance for those students to interact and ask questions with those professionals, which I think hopefully will just be like something that is an opportunity that's currently doesn't exist in Tasmania, but certainly I guess in distributing Handmade Happiness, I've seen lots of fun community festivals in other places that seem to be having a great couple of hours of cinema and entertainment and community. And I guess I helped do a little bit of programming at another festival, and I thought, it would be nice. It would be nice to have this as part of the calendar. And it also, I think, celebrates that things are made at a very high level locally. There are lots of animation professionals working from home who are not visible to the community, but are working remotely for productions in the US, and doing really fantastic work. So I hope it makes it a little bit more accessible to the community that this is an active art form that is something to enjoy, and hopefully it will be just a bit of a party.
Yes, awesome. I mean, I've alluded to it, or I've said about it a couple of times. If I was, when I was a kid, if there was an animation festival near me, that might have set me off on a completely different trajectory. It might have helped my parents to see that, oh, actually, there is a career to be had in the creative industries. This is a thing, and so yeah, I suppose inspiring young people or people I mean, I'm going to come. I'd love to get involved in that
I'm,
workshop.
I'm glad. That's great. You're
Cool.
interested. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And I, but so yeah, it's not just kids, but everyone. But tell us about the community here in Tasmania, the animation community. How is it? How does it work? I mean, is there a community?
Yeah, there's definitely a community. It's it is small. There's not a huge population in Tasmania, so logically the community of animators within that is also quite small. But I guess it's something that um, over time people have sometimes worked for local studios or introduced each other to friends or attended similar events, and it is one of the nice things about living in a smaller centre that people are likely to meet again. And certainly, in work terms, you've got to be on your I mean, I think all freelancers would say this, but you definitely want to do your best work every time when there's a really small pool of people to work with and for, and it's quite close knit. And I think, as I've sort of mentioned in the festival animation context, it's not something that you're pursuing for any other reason than that you love it. There are not there's not glory to be reached in any sense. But if it's something that you have a passion for, then it's just a wonderful thing to connect with other people that share that passion, and to have a sense of community with them, because I think people throughout society can feel like maybe they're not like other other people in the context they find themselves. And I guess to feel like you're in a room where you really belong is a lovely thing.
Yes, yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, so yeah, we'll make sure we have links to the festival in the show notes, so everyone can find it and everyone can come along.
Thank you so much.
Book your flights from the mainland. Come across to Tassie; it's an incredible place, and as you've said, Vivien, you'll always bump into creative people here. It's quite something, and it's wonderful that you're organising this event. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. What else are you working on right now?
I've got a music video that I'm currently working on. I've done a whole series of digital projects, because I do 2D and cutout animation as well. And I've just got the opportunity to shoot something else with stop motion, so I'm trying to slightly level up my my approach and my setup, my technical setup. But yeah, it's a music video called Drive Slow, which is about reducing animal deaths on roads, which is a problem in lots of places, but is certainly quite a visible problem in Tassie. And it's for an independent artist, and yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it and to sort of sharing some of the behind the scenes as we get closer to filming shots. At the moment, we've got high levels of tree making and hills and different things. So just trying to make some
Okay.
cartoon trees because we don't want to make every
Yeah.
leaf on the, on the trees,
No.
because there's got to be a forest, because that's where we live and we have a lot of forests. And so we're just sort of trying out colors and construct a lot of hills and sort of lots of experimenting and putting things together, which is exciting, but also we need to get cracking with the puppets.
Yeah.
We've made lots of backgrounds, and it's time for the heroes to emerge.
Awesome. Oh, terrific. And something I mean, I go, if listeners, you go onto Vivien's YouTube, you have other work that's Tasmanian based as well. So, I mean, that's something we hadn't touched on is how important making work here in and about life in Tasmania is. How important is that to you?
I mean, I think it's just something that I find personally more meaningful than working on things that are, for example, international content, where it's designed to go out to a sort of mass audience. So, for example, international kids films where, the aim is to sort of meet a huge audience. I guess I just like being connected to a story where I think it has a slightly unique point of view, and I kind of feel like that's what we have to offer, and something that I'm interested in working on. When I've been very lucky to have the opportunities to go to larger festivals overseas of films and animation in particular, you can see things where it's the most beautiful technique in the drawing, or in the 3D animation, and that's something that I certainly could have more skills at creating. But even if it's perfect, sort of technically and artistically, if the story is not unique and sort of fresh, then I just struggle to have the same level of enthusiasm as if it's something that maybe is a little bit more, less complex, or a little bit more rudimentary, something with a smaller budget, and so less love has been able to go in from less artists, but still something where I've never seen it before, and it's something that a point of view that's unique, then it will stay with me, and I'll learn something about the world, and I really enjoy that. So I'm kind of hoping that in the future that's the kind of work that I can do, and certainly I think that people all around the world who are doing that, that they are doing something valuable and meaningful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, context is key, and doing things that we are passionate about. We're going to produce great work. I've just had friends visiting from the mainland who'd never been to Tassie before, and they're nature lovers, and the kids had so many questions. And so yeah, I mean, the music video that you're working on right now would really help, I'm sure, those kids to understand the things that they're seeing, as they're driving around this beautiful place.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eleanor Tucker, who's the artist, is, I think really hoping to connect that music video with kids and young people, having a connection as a teacher at a primary level. I think, yeah, hopefully, when we do finish all of the sets and all of the puppets, we'll be able to, yeah, sort of represent something that people know, and reflect it back to them, and they might see it with fresh eyes.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Oh, Vivien, thanks so much for sharing. Where can listeners find you online? What's the best way to find the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I've got a YouTube channel, and it's just up with my name, Vivien Mason. But I'm also active on Instagram and Facebook, and my handle there is Vivien Made This. So yeah, I'll definitely be posting updates about the music video and the festival, and who knows what else comes after that.
Terrific. Vivien, thank you so much for your time. Yeah, I just, yeah, I like I say, I really learned a lot today and look forward to hopefully getting a chance to meet you at the festival in person.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you so
yeah,
much
thanks
for
for your time.
having me, and for your enthusiasm, and yeah, I feel like you're interested in a similar area than I am, so it's great to see you connecting with different artists and their process.